welcome to another video by me, Alan. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, in which I will be reviewing a Flames of War book, instead of just doing a normal unboxing. So, this was actually sent to me by one of my friends. He watches this channel, I'm sure you've seen his comments around, because he comically accidentally got two Fortress Italy books in one of the value boxes. Like the D-Day one, except this was, I believe, Italian battles. So, he sent it to me so that I could do a little review of it for the channel. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is I love the cover art showing off the big tank destroyers, the Elefants, that Germany was fielding. These things were terrifying to Americans and Soviet tanks, because there was just nothing we could put out there that would resist their firepower. Hell, there was very little that the Germans could put out there that would resist the firepower. And God knows the Italians and Japanese never made anything like it. But anyway, I like the look of those things. I like a look of a lot of strange tanks. You'll notice that as a trend. On the back you see the rest of the battle scene. Looks like another Elefant. Some Americans, you can see a Tommy gun there. And another elephant. There's lots of elephants in this. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick right now, so you'll have to forgive the little sniffles throughout the video. Anyway, let us open it up and examine it as we go through. So, very first page, you get a little overview of the various Italian front lines as they moved up. The yellow markings are different defensive lines that the Germans erected. Then you get your table of contents. I am mostly going to be skipping the introduction and the history sections to focus on the lists, because that is the actual Flames of War review. If I was just doing a history video, that would be different, of course. Introduction, how this book works, why collect a Fortress Italy force, etc. And they're just talking about using company diagrams. I would also like to note at this time that I will be reviewing this from a version 4 perspective, because I have actually never played version 3, so I feel like it would be pretty improper of me to judge it based on that point. You first have the Anzio battles, and the Gothic line and such. And then we have a little brief overview of forces, which is really cool. I really like these because it gives you much better than a table of contents, because you're able to see what are my tank lists, what are my motorized lists, what are my infantry, more infantry, fortified. Well, there's only one fortified, but then you got the Italians, all three of their different forces. And you got pictures of some beautifully painted models, things that I could never even hope to do. So first, it looks like it focuses on the Hermann Goering platoon. Now, yeah, I know it's not really pronounced Goring, but I like to be fun. You guys know me, king of fun over here. So it kind of gives you a general overview of the different tactics that you are employing. Now a lot of this pertains more to version 3 than version 4, so I'm just going to kind of ignore it, like even the Schalhunt. Yeah, I'm going to be doing all the pronunciations. That's what you guys are really here for. The Schalhunt. You don't even get those in version 4, which is kind of disappointing to me. I really like all the little quirky rules that version 3 had. So I'll kind of throw in some things for version 3. So, with this, you get a standard Panzer company, which is Confident Veteran, Hermann Goering. These are Panzer IIIs, is what makes up this one. You can have up to 4 platoons of Panzer IIIs, headquarter platoon, reconnaissance, with a little bit of infantry support, and then you get your option for your divisional support, where you can bring in Panzer companies from the Heer, meaning the actual army, because the Hermann Goering platoons are Luftwaffe Fallschirmjägers. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, actually. Yeah, it says up here that's a Fallschirmjäger division. So you get to bring all your army stuff as support. Basically, you treat them as allies. You can bring Panzer IVs, either 3 of them for 220 points, or 4 of them for 290 points. Which is decent, I guess, for Panzer III. Generally, German stuff seems to be overcosted to me, because their rules changed so much on version 4. And I think it really nerfed them down proper. You can also add the contra wire for 20 points, which I think is kind of worth it. Bring some barbed wire, just in case. You get your little reconnaissance platoon, and your little pioneers. This is going to be a really long video, by the way, guys, because I'm going to try and go through every list and give you guys my opinions on it. Well, every little grouping. As I said, this is mostly going to be for version 4. So I'm going to try and go through the different ones that you can use together and kind of judge those as a group. So, you got your Panzer Grenadier Company, which is, well, it's a Panzer Grenadier Company. There's not really that much to say about it. It has a little trucks instead of half tracks, so you're sacrificing a little bit of mobility over rough ground, and then a bit of armor protection, but you do get MG teams, and it's pretty cheap. You get 3 squads of 2 guys and 1 truck for 195 points, and that's really not too bad. You can also bring up to 3 Panzerschreck teams, all piling into 1 truck, which I'm sure is very fun for them. You can bring MGs and trucks as well. Apparently you can bring no machine guns in your machine gun platoon. That sounds like a lot of fun. So you basically just get a command SMG team and a field car for 20 points. Sounds weird. That sounds like something just for reserves or something in version 3. Okay, then you get the Panzer Pioneer Company. This is the scouts. Well, not really scouts. Anti-tank, mines, such like that. So, all of these are confident veteran in the Hermann Goering platoon. Or Hermann Goering division, I guess it is. You can replace up to 1 of the Rifle MG squads with a flamethrower at the start of the game before deployment, which is really the advantage that you have, along with a higher anti-tank rating in assaults. Again, sorry about all the sniffing. They gave me a good enough microphone that probably picks up breathing, right? That's what. Then you get the, oh boy, Afrikan Alslurin Schwerden. Oh, Schwerden, yeah, squadron. So, reconnaissance squadron, where you get little trucks. Bunch of little trucks. And little motorcycles. Yeah, it's cute. It's kawaii as fuck. I'm probably going to cut that curse word out. Just realized that I cursed there. No, maybe not. I'll leave it in. See if anybody notices. Then you get a Gepanzer. Oh god. You get a Hermann Goering armored reconnaissance squadron. Afrikaloren Skverden. There we go. You guys are only here to hear my wonderful German pronunciations, I know. So, these you get actual proper half tracks, which is really nice. They're a bit more expensive, but you do get to use the mounted assault rule, so that's wonderful. Oh boy, this is going on for a lot longer than I realized. And then you get the Schwerer Afrikaner Lorens, blah blah blah, that guy. So it looks like you get to pick either this command squadron or this command squadron, which actually makes this really cool and versatile. And then these are Pioneer MG teams, which means you get the flamethrower in there, and you get a better anti-tank rating. And, interestingly over here, if you look, one of the mandatory platoons is an artillery battery. So I think that's really cool. This is a really unique list. I've never seen anything like this. So it looks like you have to bring this guy, which is Vespes. And you get your standard support options of everyone. And then you get all the divisional support options. You have standard Stugs or Jagdpanzers, Jagdpanzer 4s, grills, self-propelled guns. All this stuff would be able to be taken in version 4. Anti-tank guns with your choice of Pack 36s or Pack 40s. Pioneer squads for your just support. Artillery batteries, flak regiments. Flak regiments are confident veteran as well. Yeah. Everything's confident veteran. I don't know why they're noting that here. It's weird. Then you get standard anti-aircraft guns, which are interestingly not reluctant trained, like most of them are in late war for the Germans. Which definitely does give you a lot more survivability, and a lot more a chance that your flak guns will actually do something, though you are definitely paying for that. Your guns here are much more expensive. In fact, they're almost twice as expensive. But it might be worth it, because you basically get them firing every turn. You probably won't have them killed early on, or have them pinned down for the entire game, because you can't roll that 5 up. Overall, I think the Hermann Goering unit is pretty decent. I would maybe take it for a spin. It does seem overcosted again because of the changes in version 4. However, I believe that its cheap tanks are better than Panthers for what they do. Okay, let's move on to the 715th Infantry Division. You can get some beautiful pictures as usual. You get a commander, Obst Ferdinand Gorschwitz. He's a regimental command headquarters and is a warrior staff team that replaces the staff team of a motorized artillery battery. Gives you some camouflage and gives you excellent communications. I don't know what he does in version 4. I'm sorry for being unprepared for this. And oh my god, this video is really long already. This will probably be my longest video to date. So you get the standard Grenadier Company, available in 2 flavors, either as the 715th or the 362nd. 367 being Confident Veteran, and the 715th being Confident Trained. You can definitely see the points difference there, especially in these guys. You may also upgrade your smallest Grenadier platoon, if you have at least 3 Grenadier platoons, to be Reconnaissance, which is an interesting little guy. It's only 15 points per squad, so if you have 2, it's only 30 points. That's really not bad, because then you got some recon. You get your standard support options, mortars, anti-tank guns, such like that. And then this one's really a simple list. You get your divisional support options between either regular Panzer Grenadiers or SS Panzer Grenadiers. The SS are interestingly not veteran, they're only fearless trained, so that's odd. And then you get the Schwerer Panzer Albigglungs. And here is the Schwerer Panzer Company, which is confident veteran. The Schwerer Panzer Companies are the elite tanks. They are Tigers, they are Panthers, they are the heaviest tanks that you can field as the Germans. And, as usual, they are horrifically expensive to put on the field. So if you want to start a Flames of War army, this is definitely where I suggest. because you can build your entire force for less than $100. So you get really good value for money there. It won't be a very versatile force, mind you, but it will be a force that you can put on the table and try a few little games with. So the interesting thing they have is that for their third option, instead of taking another unit of tanks, they can bring a dismounted panzer crew. This reflects when the Germans would run out of panzers, and some of the crews, usually the less trained or the just plain unlucky ones, would have to run alongside the panzers carrying like rocket launchers and machine guns and such, just to support the Tigers. So you get a commander, and your company commander gets 2 Tiger Ace skills in version 3, and in version 4 gets to reroll all their hit rolls, which is really nice, I think. I do think that Tiger Aces were also pretty nerfed in version 4. Maybe it's just me, but I find them to be far less useful than the options that you can get in version 3. Your Schwerer Panzer platoons are tank aces as well. You can bring 1, 2, 3, or 4. Though 4 of them will run you 860 points. Though you do get frickin' Tigers. Frickin' Tigers will win you the day with just brute force sometimes. Now you get perhaps the strangest list I've ever seen, which is the Schwerer Panzerjäger Company. And it's weird, because it's just elephants. And elephants, they're good, but they're single-purpose units. They're really single purpose. I mean, they're tank destroyers. They're the best tank destroyers you can field in the game, I believe, in this era. Oh, never mind. You do have Ferdinands as well, but the elephants are still amazing tank destroyers. They're the best you can field in Fortress Italy. But bringing a list with nothing but them seems just horribly inflexible unless you're going for something really themed. That said, on my reflection between this and Fighting First, which I also own, I really appreciate weird lists. So I appreciate that it's here. I don't see why you would bring it, but I appreciate that it's there. Of course, if you really want to start unit cheap, these are 4 elephants for 1,200 points. Can't think of a cheaper way to get an army than that. You can also bring a Schwerer Panzer platoon as a weapons platoon, which does count for your morale in version 4. So if you want something slightly more flexible, but still on the cheap, you can bring some Tigers. Now you are following the Gustav line to the Gothic line, with the various little units shown. The Fallschirmjägers have the special rule of never surrendering. They always pass their motivation tests on a 2-up to stick around. So that is quite nice. You also get this guy who survived everything the Allies could throw at him, pretty much. And then you get the actual Fallschirmjäger Company. I thank Band of Brothers for me being able to pronounce Fallschirmjäger. Now it looks like you get the option of 2 different units, which, interestingly, so the fearless guys over here, the first Fallschirmjäger, cost slightly more because they never surrender, about 10 points on the HQ, about 10 points across the board to upgrade per platoon. So that's probably worth it, to be honest. 10 points is really not much, and just being able to keep your units in the fight is something really powerful. So you do get the option of 3 Panzerschreck teams, which is really nice, and you get the option of, they're both fearless veterans, so they're both really powerful, and then you get rifle MG teams near combat platoons. Standard support options, as you've seen several times. You got Fallschirmjäger Pioneers with rifle MGs who are fearless veterans. Again, you get the option to upgrade them for 10 points, so that way you can have your utterly fearless units. And then you get your divisional support for this unit. I would say that the Fallschirmjägers are a good starting point if you want a German army. A German infantry army, because they are fairly elite, and they are expensive points-wise, so you can bring just a few of them, and it will really matter. I mean, you get your money's worth, so to speak. I try and make it so that my review talks a bit to newer Flames of War people, because that's who I really want to appeal to. I myself am a newer Flames of War player in the grand scheme of things, compared to, I'm sure, a lot of you guys. And I want to really appraise where you can get new players, because I believe that version 4 needs to do that. Because games are built on new players. So I'm going to put a quick cut in here, because my camera can only record out to half an hour. So, yeah, that's how long I've been rambling. Quick cut, be right back. And we're back. So here is the Reichsgrenadier Division, which is confident trained. And this is where you get to be a little more of a horde army. You can bring a lot of infantry and a lot of support units in this group, because you're only confident trained. Again, though, you're still paying for those German special rules, so you're really not getting too much of a discount. But you do get divisional support from tank hunters, including Stugs, Marauders, and such. Anti-infantry guns, surprisingly confident trained. And then you get... I'm not going to go into too much detail with all of these lists, obviously, because I'm sure you're agreeing with me that it's getting a little bit samey. So I want to include a little bit of variety, but I'm going to kind of skim a lot of these, because they are getting pretty samey at this point. So at this point you get Jaegers in the Gerpenjäger Company. So Jaegers are mountaineers. They get all sorts of special rules from being mountaineers. Better cross checks, better stuff like that. Or I guess not cross checks. I would have to look it up, but mountaineers do get special rules still. And they are confident veterans. So that is exciting. And this is the north of Italy, so it is very mountainous terrain. A lot of people imagine all of Italy as vineyards and stuff like that, you know. But you do have to remember it does have the Alps. And here you get the assault guns, which are captured Italian models. I do like the little flat Italian assault guns. And here we finally come to field fortifications, one of my favorite things. I do like the idea of fortified platoons a lot. I will be getting a Atlantic Wall review in once I see how well this is received. So you have 2 HMG nests with 4 minefields for 250 points, and I think that is a steal, frankly. I mean, nests are good, and minefields are amazing. Not necessarily for the actual effect they have on battle, but for the sheer psychological deterrence of them. People don't want to drive into minefields, so with 4 of them you can really protect your areas. And here we get the actual Stützpunkt, where you can choose from either confident, trained, or fearless veteran soldiers, though you definitely do pay for those fearless veteran soldiers. But as these are fortified positions, I believe that the fearless veteran is less necessary than in other areas, because you're going to be relying on minefields, on barbed wire, on things like that to ensure that you just funnel your enemy into your kill zones. At least that is if you're defending, which you may not necessarily be. So you get different choices in bunkers, different choices in support, minefields and such. You get mortars, which are in trenches as well, with observation rifles. You get infantry guns in gun pits, you get trench lines, you can bring up to 12 minefields. It'll cost you 600 points, but you can bring 12 minefields. That sheer number is just insane. You can cover the field with minefields. You can make it so your enemy has to cross minefields. Imagine what that would do to a Soviet conscript player. Their numbers will be reduced by 2/3 statistically by driving through those minefields. And that's assuming you don't really have buildings around. You could probably put it so the minefields were 2 or 3 layers deep just around your objectives. Make it so it's almost impossible for a Soviet player to get to them. I mean, I guess you could bring some mine stompers in. That would always be fun. Anti-tank obstacles, standard price, 100 points each. I do like anti-tank obstacles. You could hide your own infantry behind them for bulletproof cover and protection from the tanks. Barbed wire, standard. You get gun points, or gun pits. 6 of them for 35 points, though as soon as you start the game, the empty ones are removed. Communication trenches, which are just basically bonus trenches. You can bring 9 of them for 45 points. I'm sorry, I do love fortified lists. I just love the idea of channeling your enemies. Just playing these mind games with them. More beautifully painted models, and then we got Panzer Grenadiers with a Panzer Division, which withdrew to the Anzio area. And then you get your very standard Panzer Company. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, folks. I was rudely disturbed by my roommate's little dogs, so that was fun. Anyway, moving swiftly on from that, you get your Panzer Company. So you can bring either Panthers or Panzer IVs in your company command unit. However, you do have to have at least one Panzer platoon that matches your company commander. All of your platoons except for one may be Panthers or Panzers. A Panther is a Panzer, but just to differentiate between Panzer IVs and Panthers, that's the differentiation they make. So, Panthers are really expensive. Panzer IVs are really still pretty expensive compared to other nations' tanks, but acceptably not expensive. For Germans, at least. Get anti-aircraft guns as weapons platoons, scouts as a weapons platoon, and flame panzers as regimental support, along with captured Italian assault guns. Then you get, what are they called? Garpenzi Panzerjäger, Panzer Grenadier Company. So, they are mounted assault units, and they can bring Panzerjägers, which in their HQ unit. Panzerjägers are a type of mine that you place on the side of a tank. It's very good at blowing up tanks. They're a bit more expensive than standard infantry, though they do come at confident veterans, so you can't really complain too much about them. And you get standard mounted assistants, and then you get options between the 26th Panzer Division and the Grenadier Division. This seems almost tailor-made with version 4 in mind, because you can bring these as a second regiment to your first one, be it the 26th Panzer or the 90th Panzer Grenadier. They are the same points. They are both confident veteran, but they basically just serve as flavor for one or the other. You can bring your MG teams with trucks if you'd like. 5 points for the entire platoon to be given trucks, though I don't really see the point of it in version 4. Again, pretty standard support options across the board. You get a Luftwaffe Jäger Company, which is reluctant trained, so your troops are cheap as chips in this. You get 90 points for 3 squads of rifle MGs. You can't really go much cheaper than that, for Germany at least. You get standard support, though this time, again, it's cheap as chips. 4 machine guns for 80 points. Pack 40s for 95 points. These things are so cheap. I do love this idea because, again, it offers you versatility. You could have a horde army or an elite army with this same book. Hell, even with the same forces. You start off with the elite unit, and then as you get more and more into Flames of War, you can upgrade to these horde army. Well, upgrade. But you can also play it as a horde army as you amass more and more models. And I know you will if you like this game. If you like any model game, you will. You get the standard divisional support for all these guys. Your support will always be confident veterans. So it does add a little bit of survivability, even if you are those poor, confident trained or reluctant trained guys. You get all sorts of artillery and such. Standard corps supports. I don't know what corps support is supposed to be. I assume it's the same as regimental. Gameplay-wise, I obviously know the difference, like, real world-wise. You also get the 8.8 centimeter flaks on truck beds. I'm sorry, I'm getting really tired. I'm trying to kind of rush through the last of this. I'll slow down when I get to Italy because I like Italian stuff. You get assault guns with bow-guards and radio support tanks. You get a reserve Panther platoon, which is much cheaper. At the highest level, it's 260 points cheaper. But it will always be in reserve. Even where you don't have reserves, you have to roll for it. Which means that it might not come in when you want it to. Hell, if you get really unlucky, it might not come in for the entire game, so you're gambling a little with this guy. I guess it would come in on turn 3 regardless, but it's really a gamble. Can you really afford to have 700 points of your force missing for 3 turns? Or will that put you inevitably behind? You can have broom bars, which are one of my favorite little machines. Because they're like little tiny Sturmtigers. They're wonderful assault guns against like a bunker or something. The Allies bring many. You get looted assault guns, which are Italian tank destroyers. You get Ooster Grenadiers, which are volunteers from prisoner of war camps and stuff like that, which serve for the German army. They are reluctant trained, and their points reflect that. Though 85 points, I would probably bring one. Rocket launchers, armored rocket launchers, air support, anti-aircraft guns who are reluctant trained, 95 points for 2 Flak 88s. And then you get all the stats that you need. So, just going to give a quick overview of the German stuff. I love the versatility of it. I love how many times you can kind of cross things over. I love that you get painting guides, and apparently the Hermann Goering Infantry would be painted differently because they're camo compared to the standard Grenadiers, though I'm sure your gaming group would be happy to let you use Grenadiers as Hermann Goering units. I'm sure even a tournament would be happy, as long as you clearly lay out in your list what you're doing. But if you're just getting started out, your standard Grenadier unit. And then you get your Fallschirmjägers, which use a similar camo to these guys, but not exactly the same. Very similar, though. And you get the standard German camouflage of this area. And then you get a few little pictures of the Italians doing things for once. And then you get a little overview of what the fascist RSI was at this time. And interestingly, you get German mission tactics and stormtroopers along with the unique Italian role, which I love, called heroism. The first time one of your platoon commanders dies, you roll a dice on a 2-up. He just comes back to life and then inspires his men to greatness. Because that means you will, for that platoon, always pass all your motivation tests on a 2-up at that point. I love the unknown hero idea. It gives the Italians something special. It gives you a reason to field these instead of Germans. Though they did use German equipment, so you could easily use German models, just painted up a little bit differently. And that would be perfectly acceptable, at least to me. You could also use Italian miniatures, because they did use a lot of old Italian equipment. So you get your infantry company, which is confident trained. I also want to note, unlike early and mid-war Italians, I should say version 3 mid-war Italians. The version 4 mid-war Italians haven't been released yet, so hold your breath on that. I will be bringing out an Avanti review as soon as they get released, because I'm going to go pick mine up as soon as possible. I do love the Italians. But back then, they were used like the Soviets. They had tons and tons of units on the field. In this, they're treated like the Germans. They've got a few, but elite units. Well, decently elite. Competent, trained. They also don't use the 8 million bayonets rule in this, which you would find earlier, because these were trained very standardly by the Germans. Whereas earlier in the war, they were basically just a bunch of conscripts thrown under whatever commanders they could find. You get standard ideas for your different units. However, you can bring 6-pounders, which I just find kind of unique. Then you get a mix of Italian and German equipment. Then you get the reconnaissance company, which is again very standard, except you get reconnaissance platoons for every one of your platoons. Which means that you'll be always gone to ground unless you shoot or assault. So if you're moving tree line to tree line, your infantry can be very hard to hit. And then you get MGs, and then you get motorcycles, which is fun. Italian motorcycles are different than German ones in the sense they didn't have readily available sidecars, so the other guy would just be hugging onto the driver for dear life as he lugs their equipment with them. You can bring assault guns, and you can also bring the looted assault gun. So if you want to kind of roleplay a little bit, you can just say they're not actually looted assault guns, and just Italian assault guns serving Italians. Then you get that standard stuff for your different units there. But then you get the RSI parachute Perisardi, which were the loyalists of Mussolini. They were willing to fight and die without German training. So the other ones were basically offered to join the northern Italians, the fascist Italians, after Italy surrendered, with German training. These were already trained, so they use Italian rules rather than German ones, which means you get Avanti, which means to advance, which in version 4 means that you pass your motivation tests for a follow me order on a 2-up. They also get the heroism rule that I loved from earlier. And on top of that, they're fearless veteran, so they are really good. Just on the tabletop, they are rifle MG teams, so they're not bad there. They're 175 points, so they're pretty standard, a little bit cheaper than Germans are, which I think really works in version 3. And then you get the various support options that you normally get, including Panthers, or assault guns, or radio-controlled tanks, or Schwerer Panzerjägers. You get just so much stuff with these guys. I love them. I love the Avanti. And then you get machine guns, again at a very standard rate, and mortars, which interestingly cannot make combat attachments. And then the Demolisher platoons, which can bring flamethrowers. Can you tell I really like these guys? Then you get the simple Italian arsenal. And then you get the painting guide, which is the very last unit. And they were all green, and they could wear either... Huh, that's interesting. They actually talked about how who would usually use Italian uniforms, but I would argue that they were re-equipped from time to time. So if you just want to repaint little German guys, I would definitely say that that would be historically accurate. Now for my final thoughts. I really love this book. Well, let me rephrase. I don't love the Italian time period as much, but as far as a book goes, I really love it. It has everything I could ask for. It has unique, weird lists. And on top of the unique, weird lists, it has useful lists. It has lists where you can build up your forces, starting with the confident veteran ones and moving on to reluctant trained ones. So you can just field a horde of guys. Again, for a new player, that's really important. If you're an old neckbeard, like I know a lot of you are, and I mean that with absolute admiration, that you guys have stuck with a game this long. And neckbeard is monogender. You can be a woman, and if you've been playing war games for 20 years, I still consider you a neckbeard. But if you've been playing Flames of War for a while, you do have to remember that there are new people. And you have to attract that. You can't just say, well, Italians have to be played in battalion strength. Well, no, because if you're a new player and say you're a 14-year-old girl and you get a $40 allowance a month and you really want to play Italy in World War II, you know everything about Italy, you've memorized Mussolini's speeches or whatever, and then somebody says, well, I'm afraid that you have to have 20 infantry stands per platoon to play it. And you'd just be disheartened. And to me, that's the biggest thing we have to acknowledge, is that you need to have lists for beginners. You need to have lists for those who are intermediate, like I am. You need to have lists for those like you, who want to field their entire army on the field with as much as possible, which I believe is what those reluctant trained lists are perfect for. You can bring hundreds of models. I'm counting each infantry as a model, but you can bring hundreds of models that you've painstakingly painted over years and over decades, and you can place them all on the table and see them in their glory, repelling the American invaders from Italy, or defeating fascism in the name of freedom. Sorry, I got a little carried away there. I do recommend Fortress Italy, for sure. And on top of that, I also recommend their digital products that are attached to Fortress Italy. Namely, the Italian lists for the Allied forces. Because, again, that little girl who really loves everything Italian, would love those lists. You would love playing Italy no matter what side you're on, if you're an Italophile. And I believe it's important to have these lists, to have everything. I believe it's important to have as broad a range as possible of lists. And I believe that any of you who enjoy Flames of War in a similar way that I do would agree with me. This has been Alan. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys on the next review.